Happy hump day, everybody. Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. Here is your weekly dose of fun with myself, Rachel Hopmayer, and of course, none other than the latest, the greatest, Andy Herman. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Always great to have you back. Rachel Hopmayer Wednesdays are becoming a hugely popular thing. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm just honored to be here. Truly. I love the YouTube comments. I love the fun we have. And I love getting to make more content for Packers fans. At the end of the day, that's always the goal.
Absolutely. And there's enough thirst for it, for everyone to party with it. So no, I'm excited and happy to have you back as always.
Absolutely. So let's start with the Hall of Fame news. Everybody's chomping at the bit.
Yeah, very much so. So in, sort of interesting news, obviously with, the Greg Jennings, recent comments, which always haven't been maybe the most, friendly comments towards the Packers and the organization, towards Aaron Rodgers, things like that. But certainly from a pure statistical and on the field, sort of performance, Greg Jennings by far and away more than deserving of a Packer Hall of Fame honor. And then Tim Harris as well, former outside linebacker, one of the few, really kind of proud Packers from those early 90s, late 80s, also very deserving. I think they're both in due to their video game prowess. Now, I'm not talking about how they can play video games. I'm talking about, first of all, and I'm going to talk over almost everyone here, because I'm sure very few people, yourself, including many listening, have played Tecmo Super Bowl. But the Packers were not exactly a juggernaut on Tecmo Super Bowl back in the early 90s, one of the first and greatest NFL games of all time. Bob Nelson at nose tackle, for anyone who ever played, is an absolute cheat code. If anyone got Bob Nelson, who I don't even know Bob Nelson, the actual Packer, I don't know that he ever did anything as a Packer, but Bob Nelson as a Packer on Tecmo Super Bowl was an absolute cheat code. You could immediately just sack the quarterback basically in every play. Outside of that, Tim Harris was about the only good thing on that team. So Tim Harris, worthy of inclusion in the Packers Hall of Fame for his talent in Tecmo Super Bowl alone. I guess you'd have to put Bob Nelson in then too. And then of course, one of the great all-time moments in video game history, the Greg Jennings broken leg YouTube video where he carries the entire team on his back. So two video game related notes here. But of course, Greg Jennings for me, when I was obviously, watching the team, I think it was college at that time, when he came out of Western Michigan and what he was able to do, one of my favorite Packers by far at the time. I'm not a jersey guy. I had a Greg Jennings jersey, just had to have one. And watching his progression from, kind of small school player into this, ridiculous target for Favre and Rodgers was really, really fun. And, that Packers team that lost in the NFC Championship game to the Giants in the insanely cold game, like that's when, that receiving core really just was continuing to take off. And Jennings, of course, was a big part of that. So excited to see him in. I'm excited to see Harrison as well. And it should make for an interesting Hall of Fame class inclusion at the Packers Hall of Fame. Not exactly Charles Woodson, Al Harris, but a good class nonetheless.
I am 100% sure that the committee absolutely takes those video game standards into consideration. So you are just right on the money with that, Andy. Love this. I'll have to see how much I can buy that game for on eBay, if that even exists anymore. Because
I have one still. I have a copy still of Tecmo Super Bowl and original Nintendo. So come over.
And your kids will look at that and remember how old you are. That ages you, Andy. You got to keep up with the times.
I just bought it as a vintage item, so it's definitely not anything I played as a kid, because obviously I'm still in my early 20s and wouldn't have been able to play back in the day.
Right. Let's remember, for all of you out there, I was born in 96. I don't know what the heck Andy's talking about.
Yeah, same.
Right. So let's move on to maybe a little more, just like a touch more relevant of news. Yeah. After a 6-day stint on the practice squad, Quinton Dunbar was released. And again, I always look at things from the perspective of a player's journey. I was kind of hoping this would be his re-entry successfully back into the NFL, reuniting with Joe Barry, especially even before facing Washington. Now he doesn't even get to do that.
Yeah, no. And it's, as you talk about kind of watching that, their recent journey, it would have been nice if we got a better story out of it.
Yep.
However, more often than not, if you can't make the Detroit Lions as a corner, and then you can't stay on Arizona's practice squad as a corner, things have probably gone off the rails in your career a little bit. So expecting Quinton Dunbar to come in and all of a sudden refined, the couple of years that he was, really good in Washington, probably was a little bit of a fool's hope. The fact that Matt LaFleur mentioned him in his press conference before the week last week gave me some indication that maybe he thought something was there. That obviously was not the case. Again, I don't think we can be super surprised by the fact that this player's now been a journeyman, going from Seattle to end of last year to Detroit to Arizona to Green Bay. I don't think it's that shocking, but it would have been nice if they could have got something out of it. But as I said last week, out of Dunbar and Isaac Yiadom and of course, Rasul Douglas, who we'll talk about in just a moment, if they can get semi-competence out of one of them, it'll be a win. Dunbar showed some signs of that. Hopefully that can continue moving forward. And
Rasul Douglas is the proof that there is a pipeline from the Cardinals practice squad to success in Green Bay. In his debut, he played 52 snaps on the Packers defense, fourth most. You've got Campbell and, heavyweights like that above him. He didn't even start, and he still had that type of impact on the game.
He did. As I went back and watched this defensive film more, there's a couple issues. There's a play where he needs to probably get back, and it looks like there was some confusion, which is bound to happen as a player is just still trying to learn the defense and get to know the nuances and the communication, things like that. So there's a couple of plays like that on tape. I think it was Ross Uglum who said, this is a very professional cornerback, job that Rasul Douglas did on Sunday. And I think that's a perfect way to put it. He kept everything in front of him, didn't allow any big plays. Yes, he had the 15-yard penalty. There was a missed tackle, I think. But overall, if you're looking at somebody being able to come in, not allow any big plays, keep everything in front of them, and play with intensity too, I thought that was as good of a first impression as you could have given the situation. A couple other things that I liked. A lot of times when you get a new corner like that, maybe you want to just keep them in one role or do it in one specific thing. They were able to move Douglas and Stokes left side to right side. There's a play where it's a go route down the field. I think it was Mooney, but I could be mistaken on that, but I think it was Mooney. Douglas was able to keep with them step for step the entire way. There's a little out early in the game that he jumps right away knowing it's going to be an out. Now you have to be a little careful so that they don't get you on an out and up later, but read it perfectly and was all over it. There's a lot on tape that I really liked, especially from a guy off of a practice squad that's basically been on the streets. For that type of performance coming in as a non-starter, as you mentioned, there's a lot to like there, and I'm excited to see what he can do moving forward.
I agree. I think that the talent, the potential is there. His versatility in what we've seen Green Bay, manifest for themselves this year reminds me in certain ways of Devondre Campbell in the sense of molding this power into something so versatile, so speedy, and really able to have these impacts right off the line. As you said, other new additions that I think there's some debate around how they should be used. We saw Jaylon Smith last week barely played more than Chris Barnes. And I'm personally interested in that balance between those two because of the leadership and physicality that they've developed in Chris Barnes for the past 2 years.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, Oren Burks had more snaps than Jaylon Smith, who had more snaps than Chris Barnes, which is really interesting. Now, Barnes did recently have that injury, so maybe they're still kind of, easing him back in, possibly. Also, you could, with Justin Fields, consider he's a little bit more of a mobile quarterback. So maybe you want the speed of Burks and Smith on the field a little bit more so that if he starts to scramble, you can have the ability to kind of chase him down a little bit more than maybe what Barnes has. But personally, I believe Barnes is the best of the three linebackers. And I'm not saying any of the three are just this complete linebacker that you can just plug and play and say, wipe your hands and forget about it. They all have some strengths. They all have some weaknesses. And I do think there can be roles for all three. I think Burks has been a tad bit better than maybe people think. Although this last game, he had a really brutal missed tackle in the open field on a, I think it was actually Herbert's 26-yard run where he whiffed completely on it. Barnes had a play where he got completely washed out, and then Smith missed a tackle as well as got completely washed out of a play as well. So there's opportunity there. And I can understand why maybe they're trying these different linebackers in different spots because they've solidified one in Devondre Campbell. And now they've got three guys who can kind of do a variety of different things. Can they figure out some sort of rotation where it's basically like a platoon in baseball, right? Like you're just trying to put together these three guys into a three-headed dragon that they can almost make a real life competent linebacker together. And we'll see if that can happen. I do think Jaylon Smith could play a little bit of dime linebacker and maybe be used a little bit more in like that Joe Thomas, not the offensive tackle, the linebacker that the Packers used to have, maybe in that sort of role. but we'll see. I personally, I'd like to see Chris Barnes on the field more than the other two, which was not the case. And we'll kind of see how they use those three moving forward.
I definitely agree with that assessment that of this three-headed dog, I think Barnes has earned and shown on the tape that he is more dominant at this point in the game. But I also think that this current situation with the defense is a lot like what we saw Matt LaFleur reference when they brought Cobb into the wide receiver room, that they're going to be very much individually game planning, and that this team's characteristics might be changing week to week more than it has in recent years, and just playing to these players' strengths. They have a situation like that, especially in the slot on offense, and now we're seeing that here. So it's kind of, you don't know what you're going to get, and they are just hoping that they put the right combination out. And obviously all we can do is look at the tape and say what we would have done differently.
Yeah, that's the fun part of it, right? It's kind of going back and looking at it. That's no questions about it. But I think those are all, that's a good thing, right? I love the fact of how Matt LaFleur wants to get his best players on the field in certain situations. They spend a ton of time game planning, and that's not exactly, something new, but it's something that they do a very good job of, is specifically trying to target ways that they can take away opposing offense's strengths and obviously attack opposing defense's weaknesses. You can tell they put a lot of time, effort, energy. And this was week 6, right? Against the Bears on the road. You have new players like Rasul Douglas and Jaylon Smith. Even Randall Cobb is new to this offense. You are still feeling out these players and what type of role that they can succeed in and excel in your specific offense and defense respectively. And these are the sort of things that you want to see. 15 snaps for Jaylon Smith in one game on the road against Chicago in week 6, a game you were probably going to win. Same thing, even Isaac Yiadom, right? It didn't work out, but they tried it for the opening and they didn't work. They moved to Rasul Douglas. Like, it's okay to have some things like that where you're mixing and matching different things. And overall, the defense has found some levels of success. They've found how to use Devondre Campbell over these first 6 weeks. They found how to use Eric Stokes over these first 6 weeks. Henry Black, even in that dime safety role, as well as filling in for Darnell Savage. They found a spot for him. So they're finding ways to utilize these players. Obviously, Randall Cobb fits in that on the offensive side as well. And I think they're going to continue to do that with Douglas and Jaylon Smith and anyone else who they may pick up along the way.
Exactly. I mean, as we've heard, in the words of Brian Gutekunst, roster building is 365 days a year. The Packers are evidence that what they thought would be their week 1 starting roster is certainly not the situation going into week 6, and many facets of all of this. But at the end of the day, there are some defensive standouts, and one of those is certainly Dean Lowry. At this point, I think we can confidently say the bear has been poked. The beast has awoken. It's wonderful to see an early down guy really getting this dirty work in.
Yeah, I'm saying this obviously quite facetiously, but obviously he read my grades from the first 3 weeks, because it was not fun those first 3 weeks. And here's sort of been the MO on Dean Lowry through the course of his career is, for the most part, he would play nondescript football. Mm-hmm. Not great, not bad, just sort of maybe replacement level to average level football. And you need guys like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Depth.
But there would also be a couple games usually each year, a couple games he would struggle, but a couple games where he would just have a standout performance out of nowhere. And you'd be like, where the heck is that Dean Lowry been? Like, that guy looks phenomenal. Last year, we never got those standout games. It was always just the nondescript or the below average play. And then he comes into this season, the first 3 games, same 3 or 4 games, same sort of thing, nondescript or below average, and really looked like a liability in a couple of those games. Mm-hmm. These last 2 weeks, he's been playing really good football, making plays, impact level plays, sacks, getting pressures, pushing guys into the backfield. And for the longest time, this defensive line, Kenny Clark has basically been the only guy who can reset the line of scrimmage. Yep. You're not seeing it out of Lancaster. You're not seeing it out of Lowry. I mean, Slayton isn't quite there yet. Of course, Heflin's not that guy. So if you're looking for a guy that's going to take an offensive lineman and drive them 5 yards into the backfield, Kenny Clark's been your guy. We've seen some of that out of Dean Lowry these last couple of weeks out of nowhere. And it is such a pleasant surprise, because if all of a sudden he can add that, and I'm not saying he's going to do that week in and week out, but if he can do that more consistently and be either nondescript or better rather than nondescript or worse, that is a huge win for this Packers defense.
I completely agree. He makes everyone around him better. That pushing back into the backfield has to be the most standout skill, but being able to make Kenny Clark better is just one of those intangibles at this point. He's 27th in total pressures amongst interior defensive linemen, 8th in assisted tackles, which is just, again, goes to show how big of an impact he has on the line around him. Agreed. Now it is time for my gripe. I told you I'd have this bone to pick. We all know that chicks dig the long ball. Aaron Rodgers made that clear. He said the words that were not spoken before. But right now, through week 6, Aaron Rodgers, by his standards, certainly not by my standards, because I can't throw an accurate deep ball. Aaron Rodgers has not thrown many accurate deep balls. And it's kind of shocking to see a hallmark of his play repeatedly fail.
It is. It's very surprising at this point. And, you know, Rodgers has not been great through these first 6 weeks. He's certainly been good. He's certainly had amazing moments. I don't think anyone's going to take away the rushing touchdown against the Bears. I don't think anyone's going to take away, you know, the comeback in those last, you know, those throws to Davante Adams to set up, you know, the game winners and things. Like, there have been some very magical moments already this season, and nobody's saying Aaron Rodgers is washed. Nobody's saying anything like that, but he hasn't played like the MVP he has a season to go. And a big piece of that has been the inability to connect on some of these deep balls where receivers are open. Allen Lazard beat his man off the line of scrimmage and had separation this week. Rodgers couldn't hit him. We've seen it with Tunyon. We've seen it with MVS on a few plays in one specific game. We've seen it with Adams. He just hasn't been as accurate. In fact, if you would like the statistics on 20+ yard throws downfield, 9 of 30 so far. Only 30% of his deep balls have been catchable, and that is 31st amongst quarterbacks in the league. There's only 32 teams, so you know that's not good. His deep ball quarterback rating, 48.5, 31st in the NFL. 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So if Rodgers is going deep, for the most part, it has not been accurate. It has not been on target, and it has been a losing play for Green Bay. And that's something that has to change now. Eventually getting MVS back should help with that, is at least from a, you know, separation standpoint. Rodgers still has to hit those throws, of course. They have Adams, Lazard's gained separation. Those throws are there. It's something that we know Rodgers can do, and you hope he can do better moving forward.
Meanwhile, you have Baker Mayfield throwing a Hail Mary with a torn labrum, and he's accurate. So it can be done. Okay. It can be done, Mr. Rodgers, but it just is kind of crazy given all the anticipation going to the season, given the MVP, given the game that Aaron Rodgers has crafted for himself, the lane that he has dug and paved himself. It's wild to see those throws that everybody loves to ooh and ah over, and it's just overthrown to MVS or Davante, or even some of the decision-making in triple coverage. I'm not going to question them, but it's interesting to say the least this year.
Well, there's a play this week where he threw to Tunyon over the middle, and, you know, he's once again kind of fading away. He throws it into coverage. Cobb is open on the right-hand side at the same level. You know, if he looks right, instead he decides to force one to Tunyon over the middle, which is odd for him. It's rare that he forces a throw over the middle. And again, this isn't to say that these things aren't going to be correctable. And as Aaron Rodgers has correctly pointed out, his down seasons are still some of the best seasons of most quarterbacks in the world of all time. So it's not like he's playing bad, but if you are looking for more efficiency from this offense, right? These are always going to be talking points, right? When you have Rodgers and Jones and Adams and
the gold standard of passing.
Exactly. And you just saw it a year ago, right? It's a gold standard of what you expect from an offense. Mm-hmm. These last couple of weeks, the big talking point was red zone offense. What's been going on with the red zone offense? And then last week we see them go 3 of 4, should have been 4 of 4 if there's not a BS call on Equinemius St. Brown. And now, okay, we're not talking about red zone offense because they showed sort of that gold standard of performance this past week again. So now what's the next thing that, you know, you would like to see improved? It's that deep ball accuracy and that efficiency that we've known and come to love from Rodgers and come to expect from Rodgers, that if he can get back to that point, that's the next step in making this that juggernaut offense once again. 100%.
So if we move on from Soldier Field, because who knows if Aaron Rodgers is going to play there again anyway, we now face the one and only Washington football team. And this was honestly a few months ago, maybe a more anticipated matchup with the defense that was supposed to be the hallmark of this team. And there are so many issues I could list for you, so many numbers I will list for you to paint a picture. But first of all, you know, how are you feeling going into this matchup? What are you anticipating?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really nice matchup for Green Bay. Washington's not playing good football right now. Really, there's two things that would semi scare me in general. The first is that you're coming off a division road game against the Chicago Bears, one of your rivals. Yep. And then next week is Thursday Night Football on the road against Arizona. Yep. This has that trap game feel of maybe you can take your eye off of Washington, look back at Chicago, look forward to Arizona, and maybe not have your full attention on Washington, which I think would, of course, be a mistake. You need to take care of this game first before really the death part of the schedule starts to come to fruition. That's number one. And then number two, and we'll get to why Washington has struggled, and this is a piece of this in a moment, but this defensive front, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Matt Ioannidis, to me, this should be, or has the ability to be, not the best defensive line in football, the best position group in football. I'm talking defensive line, edge, corner, safety, quarterback, running backs, whatever position group you want to label. Washington's defensive front has the ability and the talent to be the best position group in football. I really feel that way. It has not been that way even remotely so far. We saw it last year. We saw at points where that Washington front, frankly, they gave Tampa Bay more run than the Packers did, than the Chiefs did, than any other team in the playoffs last year. It was Washington because of that defensive front. When you've got four guys like that can get after the quarterback and stop the run, it sets the entire rest of your defense up for success. It ruins an imposing offense's entire game plan, and it gives you a puncher's chance, even if you got Taylor Heineke at quarterback, to win those football games, which they almost did against Tampa Bay a season ago, which if you're a Packer fan, you really wish they would have in hindsight. But we know Green Bay's offensive line hasn't totally gelled yet. They've been having to move pieces around. Bakhtiari, I'm 99.9% sure is still going to be out this week. Myers is going to be out this week. So they're still kind of shuffling pieces. That's a front where if you let them, they will completely take over a game. And you're talking about potential pressures into interceptions. You're talking about forced fumbles. You're talking about not being able to run the football. So that would be my biggest concern. And then maybe taking the eye off the ball. Everything else, I love this matchup for Green Bay. And I think overall, they're obviously, very much favorites in this game, and deservedly so. But those would be the two things that I would have semi concern over.
And those are totally valid concerns. When you break down the numbers of what this defense has or has not done this year, they've allowing an average of 31 points per game, which is last in the league. They're allowing components to convert more than 57% of their third downs, last in the league. Who knows how many third downs the Packers will actually even get to against Washington, allowing 423 yards per game, 998 air yards against the team this year. So honestly, I can totally see Rodgers going into this game being like, this is it. This is where I hit the deep balls, because they're letting it happen, which maybe that is the confidence boost he needs in order to be more accurate. I don't know. I can't be that accurate from that far away. I don't even know how you work on that. Their first round picks aren't gelling. Back in my day in Washington, we used to call that position group the Alabama wall. It was just an insane amount of talent sitting right there, but you've got Bostic out for the year. So something interesting last week was Jack Del Rio moving Landon Collins to a hybrid linebacker, which in this offseason, they insisted that wasn't going to happen, both Del Rio and Landon Collins, because that's not where he wants to be. He wants to be that strong safety. But moving him closer to the line of scrimmage really seemed to benefit them. So having Landon Collins closer to that, again, could really attack on those with Myers' injury, those slight gaps that we're going to see again. But if he gets moved back to safety, that's better for the Packers. He's in the bottom four worst safeties in passing coverage this year. So again, there's so many things that could go right for the Packers. But as they said after week one, they went into it a little too mentally confident. And if they look at this matchup the same way, it could go wrong very quickly.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, that's obviously the case any week in the NFL. If you kind of take your eyes off of the opponent and start looking ahead, or don't have 1,000,000% focus, it definitely can have that happen. I have one more stat for you. On Washington's defensive drives this year, 51.5% of their drives defensively have ended up in scores for the opposing offense. 51.
So bet the over.
What's that?
So bet the over.
Bet the over. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I mean, that is unreal. Like over
Yeah.
half of drives that they've had in a game, the opposing team is scoring on, which is of course worse than the NFL. You know, as good as that defensive front has the ability to be, the rest of their defense is terrible. They don't have the linebackers. I really like Jamin Davis, excuse me, coming out this past year, but he still has a ways to go before he's a complete linebacker. Their corners aren't very good. Their safeties, especially as you highlighted, Landon Collins, not very good. They have a lot of deficiencies overall on defense, and this is not where Washington wants to be playing in Green Bay against Aaron Rodgers in this offense. Even though that maybe they're not clicking on all cylinders quite yet, this is still not the opponent that they want to see coming off of seeing Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs a week ago. So again, I really like this matchup for Green Bay. I think they're going to win this. This is the most confident I've been in a game this entire season for Green Bay. Knock on everything that you're superstitious about, but exactly. But yeah, I like this matchup.
Yeah. And again, it should be an easy check mark, but you can't go into the game thinking that way if you're playing on that gridiron. I also think, I'm excited. Obviously, I love home games at Lambeau. Professionally, I'm not traveling this year, so it's been a long 2 weeks, but Washington fans do travel well. I am really excited. I know a bunch of fans that will be coming out. It should hopefully be a beautiful fall day. Again, this is what I imagine Lambeau like at this time of year.
Yeah, there's nothing better than Sunday noon football, Lambeau Field in fall.
Yeah, I could do without the noon. Maybe.
Well, I hear you. I get it.
A little early.
It could be 8:30 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, 7 p.m. I don't care. Just put Packer football.
I'm okay with football at that time, but it's the energy to, we have to show up. It's not noon football on my couch. That's different. Noon football on my couch the past 2 weeks has been stellar. Noon football, putting on the whole ensemble, that's a different story.
Fair enough. I respect that. And I think, I think some Packer fans would like a little bit more time to drink.
Maybe. Get into the pregame.
Not that they don't start at like 4 a.m. and still get as inebriated as possible, but I think some would still like to start at 4 a.m. and then be able to go till 7:30 p.m. at night, for those Sunday night games. But I want to ask you, because you brought it up, and we'll end on this, because what better way to end, a conversation on? How do you feel Aaron Rodgers coming back to Green Bay? How do you feel it's been going so far? Because I think this is, of course, the cloud that's going to, be over the entire organization's head through the course of the year. Is the salary cap's a mess next year? Is Rodgers going to be back? Is Adams going to be back? Is Z going to be back? And so on and so forth. There's all these questions, but of course, 1A is Aaron Rodgers. Just in general, I'm not saying will he be back or will he not be back, but how do you feel it's going, the relationship between the Packers and Rodgers?
I think the relationship between the Packers and Rodgers, as in Brian Gutekunst as a representative of the Packers, when you see their every couple days, 30-second chat on the sideline at practice, I think is professional, exactly how he put it. I do not think they have a social component to them at this point, because I think all of the men involved in this situation are highly emotional. And I just implore all of you to ask yourself what the Packers would be like if more women were in this organization, because I guarantee the way the summer unfolded would not have unfolded this way. Things would be a lot more directly communicated, a lot more emotionally intellectual into the situation. And none of this would have happened. I can almost guarantee that for you, but I digress. The point is that I think it's professional. I think it's fine. And I honestly don't know that from Aaron's perspective, it hinges on his performance at all. Maybe for the administrative side of things, they're happier, more relieved that things are going well. But at the end of the day, none of this should or would really impact Rodgers' perspective here. He's doing the job that he's always known he could do and should be doing, and does do very well at an exceptionally elite level. So I think it is what it is. I think it's remained unchanged. I honestly think they probably haven't talked about any of those specifics or anything in weeks, because they're trying to focus on the football head, and that's the healthiest for all involved right now. And that's the least distracting, is to just focus on that. I think they'll revisit it at the end, and maybe it'll be on better terms now that everybody can be hunky-dory, that they won their games and everybody's happy. But again, I think a lot of this is derived from a lack of emotional intelligence and apathy into all sides of this situation. And at the end of the day, now it's in season, just like, maybe Devontae Adams' situation isn't progressing right now because it's in season and you're focusing on football. I don't think that's a bad take to have. I think at the end of the day, playing the games is the most important thing right now. And I respect when people put those financial things to the side to focus on this and then let that performance speak for itself at the end of the day. So I don't know that much has changed. I certainly can't think much has. But at the end of the day, I think Rodgers is doing what Rodgers does. We saw at training camp, it didn't look like he missed a beat. And other than the long ball situation, I still don't think he had. The legs clearly work. The belt still fits. And Aaron Rodgers owns the Chicago Bears.
Well, I apologize, Rachel, but this is why we can't have women in sports, because if there wasn't that level of drama in the offseason, what would we have done the entire offseason? We have to have constant breaking reports from Adam Schefter of everything that's going on or not going on.
Draining my phone battery.
Accumulation of information. We have to be staring at our phone on draft day to see if Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Denver Bronco or not. So I'm sorry, but we're going to have to keep everything the status quo, because otherwise we would just have this huge void of all of this incredible drama that we have during every offseason. But I think the one takeaway that I have is that it seems like Aaron Rodgers is having a lot of fun being a Green Bay Packer right now. And I think that's the best thing that you can possibly, if you're hoping that Rodgers stays Green Bay Packer past this season, I think that's the best thing that you can look for. And I think there was always the camaraderie and the respect for his teammates and his coaches. He's made that clear the entire time that this was going on, that he cared about his teammates and his coaches, the fans, everything like that. So I don't think there was ever, maybe a doubt about that. But I do think if you legitimately wanted to be traded in the offseason and then you're not having fun, or if we didn't see that same intensity, if we didn't see the belts, if we didn't see him it's not just like, he's enjoying, like it seems he's really really enjoying this, really having fun. I think that's as good of a sign as you could possibly have. Again, if your team wanting Aaron Rodgers back next year, we have an entire offseason for that, which will be, I think, probably crazier than this past offseason was, which is saying something, because this last offseason was insane, but I think this one's going to be even more insane. So Rachel, get your phone battery charged. I can't believe we are 6 weeks through the season already. I'm sad about it, frankly, because it goes so insanely fast, but it'll be the offseason before we know it, and we'll have a lot more to talk about at that time.
Yeah, it's just absolutely bonkers. I mean, it's funny. I mean, we have NBA tip-off tonight. Last night when you're watching this, and I was just looking through my pictures from Eastern Conference Finals and NBA Finals. I cannot believe that was this year. That feels like it was 2020, which feels like it was 2015. I mean, that is just wild. But man, what a ride it's been. What fun it's been. What an exciting experience it's been. I love doing this every week with you. I love seeing you in the press box. It's great to have these relationships and connections in the industry and people you just love to talk football with. And you know what, if Aaron Rodgers is having fun on the field, I can't say we're not having fun off the field.
And Aaron Rodgers now 1-0 on the season as Bucs owner. So we can always tie it back to the Packers in some way, shape, or form. Exactly. There you go. Rachel, amazing stuff as always. Thank you so much for joining me. For those listening, make sure to follow Rachel on Twitter. Where can we find you, Rachel?
At Rachel Hopmayer on everything, if you really feel like it.
There you go. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. I will be right back here tomorrow, I believe, with Peter Bukowski. So, excuse me.
I hear he's pretty tall.
He is very tall. He's oddly tall. It's very disconcerting, but he knows his Packer stuff. So we will talk with him tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.
Cheers to Washington.